morning to every one of you tuned in and listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM, also on Joy Prime Television. My name is Adam Knighty, and this is Home Affairs. Our mandate is to make homes out of houses, and we're always very excited that we have the opportunity to be doing that. So welcome on board. By way of just encouraging you this morning, I would like to tell you that let yesterday go and focus on today. Things may not have gone the way you wanted them to go yesterday. Let it go. Pick up the lessons from yesterday and move on today. See how best you can make today. Make today count. Don't focus and don't be fixated on the failures and on the negatives of yesterday. Today presents you and I another beautiful opportunity to be able to make things right by ourselves, by society, by the people we love, and ultimately by God. So why don't you make today count and not be too fixated, focused, and beating yourself for the negatives and failures of yesterday? That's how I would like to encourage you, because that's what I am going to do. Today is a beautiful new day. Quite wet at some places, but we're hoping that the sun will come up. Even if it doesn't come up, right? The rains are still very good, especially so when they don't get destructive. And then we still will be able to make today count. Welcome on board. My guest this morning, it's always very exciting to have Lawyer Kweku Pencil with us in the studio. Lawyer, good morning.
Good morning.
He wears many hats. He's a lawyer. He is a family life counselor. He's a lecturer. He's an advocate, all of them put together. And it's always very exciting to have him, because then he gets to give you all the perspectives of the issues we are looking at. And today we're again looking at your marriage and the law. Which aspect of it? No specific aspect of it, because after the last 3 engagements we had with Lawyer, we had a lot of questions we couldn't deal with. And so we thought that why don't we go into those questions, deal with them, and have people's minds settled. Of course, these are questions people sent to us and they would like answers to them. So we thought that we would use today to be able to have the answers to those questions. Now, before I get into the conversation, there are 2 things I'd like to remind you of. One is that tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m., the Joy FM Family Pop Quiz comes up. We have 3 families who will be competing to be the Joy FM Family Pop Quiz family, actually, of the week. And so tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m. you'd like to join us. Lexus Bill is your host, and what are we doing? We're generally going to be answering questions on general knowledge, very witty questions, basic questions, and so we want to have the fun and to be able to build very strong family ties in the country, and we're using this platform to do it. And the preparation process for the families are just very interesting. Yesterday we had them on Zoom, and they are very, very, very ready to have fun, ready to bond, ready to build those strong family ties. And so if you would like to be part of the Joy FM Family Pop Quiz, it's the same WhatsApp number, 055 1111997, 055 997, and hashtag is Joy Pop Quiz. That's all you have to do. We will call you and then walk you through the next stages. It is fun, and you might want your family to be part of it. Second information is that next week Sunday is Mother's Day. Yay! And it's very exciting because I am a mother of 4. And we want to celebrate mothers in a very special way this year. You know what we are doing? We're asking you to just ask Mama to relax and you cook for your mommy. So on Sunday, you will come here with your mother. We have a very beautiful setup. She will sit down, we'll treat her to some drinks and some finger foods and all, while you prepare her special rice dish for her. How about that? You can come with your siblings, and sit down, and then you do the cooking for Mama. And if you want to make your Mama feel pampered and make her feel special this Mother's Day, you only have to send us a photo of you and your mom, and like I was saying the other time, that mothers, right, who have special dishes. Sometimes there are some very interesting stories behind the dishes. Why does she like that particular rice dish? Maybe it's omutu, maybe it's jollof, maybe it's rice water. Why does she like it? You want to tell us the story behind it. Does she have any emotional attachment to that meal? You might want to tell us, add a photo to it, add the ingredients, and just send them to us. And that one too, the hashtag is Joy Cooks for Mama. That's all you have to do. And if you happen to be selected, we will invite you here to cook for Mama. And it's not just the cooking. She is going to go home with loads of goodies as well. So you might want to take advantage of that and make your mama feel pampered this Mother's Day. And those are the information I have for you before we get into the show. I just may remind you of it while the show goes on. But Home Affairs is brought to you by Amasha Partners Limited and I Care Kale Charcoal Toothpaste for white teeth and fresh breath all day long. This is another quality product from Samara Company Limited. Kale Charcoal Toothpaste, happy smile. And Music Haven, your musical coach. I will tell you into detail what the information they have for you is. So we're getting into our conversation now, and yesterday when we posted our artwork, it came with some very interesting questions, and that's what we are going to be starting with. Lawyer, you're good?
Yeah, I'm cool.
How have you been?
Well, cool.
Great. The family?
They're doing great.
Beautiful.
Sure.
So we're getting into it real quick.
Yeah.
The first question we have on the artwork, because these are all questions we have in our mail, and I have loads of them.
Yeah.
We will be, and you can actually send in your question now. Once it has to do with, some legal issues bothering you, something you want to understand in your marriage, in your relationship before you take that step. You want to ask, please send the message to 05511119997, and we will activate the phone lines as well, so you can ask your questions or contribute to it. So first one is asking, how do I take custody of my children in a divorce battle? The story is that they're going through divorce, and it's interesting how some of these processes can be very, like you are in a war-torn zone, and when you look at the descriptions she gave, they go to court. Sometimes when they step out of the courtroom, they are abusing each other and all that, and you won't have access to the children again. And this one says, I'll take them from you and you will never see them. I'll take them abroad, you will never see them. And she says, like, it's all drama.
Sure.
And she is hoping that she will take custody of the children, because she feels when the children go to her husband, from what she says, he is a womanizer, and she's not sure that the children will be well taken care of by any other woman apart from her. And they are 8, 11 and 13. Those are the ages of the children. She's asking, are there some specific things she has to do so that she is the one who will take custody of the children? She tells me that she is very well employed. She's gainfully employed. So even if the man decides not to help, she is able to take care of the children very well, and she wants custody, but she just wants to find out, are there things she can do to improve her chances?
Yes, thank you. The issue of custody of children is sometimes very exciting when you come around the course, because we have the opportunity of seeing some of these clients, and every time my observation has been like the way the parents themselves behave. I'll come to the question. It's like if you give the opportunity to the other parent to take the children away, like it's going to poison them the next hour.
Oh.
And the vim and the vigor and the energy that they put into those kind of battles is amazing. But I find as a rule generally that when people are involved in litigation, they lose the better part of their minds. But I'll come to the real issue. Custody battles are part of almost every divorce proceedings. And obviously, when you come to the court, you endorse your action. I'm talking about when you say want a divorce, there are other matters. Normally, we call them ancillary reliefs I mean, the main thing you're asking for is for the court to bring the marriage to an end. But there are also that relates to the same divorce, or that's the same marriage, one of which, of course, is the issue of custody. Now, what really happens is that every time that the court has to consider the issue of custody, that we have got the Children's Act. There are also other laws that deals with the rights of children. And as a matter of law, the High Court is the guardian by law, is the judge before whom the matter is. He has been appointed by law to take care of the interests of the children. And there is an overriding principle, which is whatever decision that the court has to make has to be made with regard to the best interests of the children. But in order to assess the best interest of the children, there are factors that the court will normally look at, having regard to the two parties. In order to assess the best interest of the children, for instance, the court may wish to look at the living conditions of both parents or either parent. I mean, to determine in which environment the children will be best placed. So therefore, your accommodation, your circumstances of both parents, your character, your conduct, the court can look at the previous conduct of the parties in relation to the children. In appropriate cases, the court would have the opportunity of speaking to the children. I'm talking about, we've got the social welfare department, which will normally assist the court in these matters. So sometimes the court would appoint not necessarily an expert, but the court will appoint the social welfare department to bring a report of, visit both homes, or have this thing with the children themselves and talk to them, because most of these proceedings may actually also be held in camera. Sometimes the court have the opportunity of listening to the children.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the overriding principle is the best interest of the children.
Okay.
And like I said, there's no one factor, there's no one indicator that the court looks at, but a lot of these things. And at the end of the day, I may put it this way: the way the judges do their work, it's like they give weight to all of these factors. But there are also sometimes some very general principles that the court will look at, sometimes depending on the age of the children. Our courts are known to generally favor giving custody of children to the mom if they are very young. If they are very young, they are below teenage, then chances are that the court will give custody to the wife. And there have only been very few cases where a court will grant children or infants to a man. You must be able, in those circumstances, the man must possibly, have to demonstrate that the woman is of such a character. There's a classic case of Beckley versus Beckley. I'm talking about our own Dr. Beckley, who was involved in all of these things.
Yeah.
He had a custody battle with his wife, and the issue that turned up in the court was that there were allegations that the woman was a woman of the night, and therefore, if the children were left in her custody, chances are that they'll be poisoned. I'm talking about morally, and so forth and so on. That's one rare case where the court granted custody of infants to the father, except that, if you are involved in a battle and they are young, then there must be something so bad about you for the court to refuse you.
Which is the
custody.
woman.
I'm talking about the woman. But other than that, it's a fair game. The court will look at, for instance, if the parties separate, you can demonstrate, the environment, for instance, where the children have always been. If they have always been with their mom, for instance, then the court will have difficulty to change the environment
of the children,
and so forth and so on. So sometimes it's not an emotional issue for the court at all. They look at the hard facts that are presented to them. Sometimes the environment where, for instance, the children have other siblings, other children. I'm talking about a home environment, people who can look after them in the home environment. These are all factors the court to look at, and however emotional either party gets, that's not the business of the court, because like I said, it's the supreme interest of the children that the court is looking at. So that's the way it goes.
So it is not like she actually can go and do anything to improve her chances of keeping the children.
Well, if after marriage she has taken steps to do things, the evidence will come before the court. Possibly before this matter, you were living, for instance, a one-room apartment. But let me put it this way: even talk about those kind of things. When a court makes an order, there are things that the court can do to ensure that its orders are also carried out. So, if, for instance, the only issue is that the woman is living in a one-room apartment, the court can make an order for the man. Please, not always the man, woman, as the way of putting it, but I'm just looking at, because typically women are almost always at the receiving end of these matters, and therefore if it becomes necessary, for instance, that the court has decided to give custody to the woman and the woman's circumstances are poor, it can go with a consequential order that the man must rent premises for them and so forth and so on. So our courts have no problems at all handling these matters.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I see 2 messages on our WhatsApp console already. Dennis, can you please help us? Okay, great. This one says, "Good morning, Adam. My husband traveled outside the country and it's about 3 years now. I have not heard from him. Oh my God. He doesn't send money. He doesn't reply messages or pick my phone calls. I've spoken to my uncle who had a message from him that he, my husband, wants to quit. We haven't heard from him ever since. We don't have children. He has children and I have mine before we got married. I used to have his sister's number but lost it after changing my phone. All his siblings are not here in the country. Parents are dead years ago. From all indications, he's not ready for any settlement. I want out. What do I do, Papa Lawyer?"
Yeah, one of the grounds of divorce, I've told you the general ground for divorce is that the parties have, after diligent efforts, been unable to reconcile their differences, and that's why we say the marriage has broken down irretrievably. But for purposes of proving the point that the marriage has broken down irretrievably, there are 1 of 5 grounds that you may have to demonstrate, lead evidence to show the court. One of which I believe will fall under this category is that of desertion. Desertion is the conduct of one party to the marriage of deserting the other party for a period of 2 years or more with intent to bring the marriage situation to an end. So therefore, the conduct of this person, as she had described, that for 2 or more years she has not seen the man, and all of this broken all of contact, the intention can be inferred from his conduct that he really intends to bring the marriage to an end, and that is a sufficient ground to petition the court.
So let me ask, in this case,
Yes.
the man is even not responding to any
Sure.
messages. So how do you annul such a marriage in court?
Oh, it doesn't present a problem to the court. What really happens is that you can always present a petition to the court. In other words, if you want a divorce, in the circumstances, you don't even have his address. Maybe there's a chance, but let's assume for the sake of discussion
Yes.
that you don't have his address. Obviously, there's something we call substituted service. Every matter that goes to court ought to be served on the other party personally. But where personal service is unavailable, you go to court and have an order for the process to be served on the person, as we say, by substitution. And substitution consists of various forms. Sometimes it consists of a publication in the newspapers. Sometimes it consists of delivering the process to a known relationship of the party. In this case, if the parents are in Ghana, there must be a presumption that he's in some form of contact with his parents, and therefore you can secure an order of court that the process must be delivered to his parents, and the law would take the position that once delivered to parents and a limited time has been given to the court, by the end of that period there's a presumption that he has been served. Sometimes the order will consist of posting the notice on some known place and so forth, and so that's what we call substituted service. The court process are not going to be frustrated because somebody deliberately makes himself unavailable to the court, or whether by accident for whatever reason. So in this case, the court can easily make the order. We have got orders which have been served on parents, we've got orders which have been served on siblings, we've got orders that have been posted at the last known place of abode of the person. The whole idea is that one way or the other, through those modes, it will come to the notice of the person, whether it's deliberately running away or by coincidence. But the court is not going to sit and wait
For
and
as
run
long
around.
as it hasn't been established that you are dead,
That is
if
so.
all of these are employed,
That is
the
so.
believers that you would have seen
That
it
is
some
so.
way, somehow.
That is so. So after the
Okay,
limited
great.
period, if the person doesn't come to court, then the court will proceed on the basis of the assumption that the person had been served. That's the law. I mean, for instance, if you have to put, I mean, for instance, if you put something by a letter, I mean, in a court matter, there's a presumption that after the number of days that the letter is supposed to go through the post, the person has received it. The
Okay.
court will not ask for clear evidence, specific evidence that that letter that was put on in the post actually come into your hands. Fair enough. The court doesn't have that time.
Beautiful.
Yes.
So your question has been answered, and I think that this should put your mind at rest, and then you take the necessary steps that you will have to take. Good morning, Adam. You have to. Do you have to? What do you have to do? Sorry. If you have to remarry after the death of your spouse, do you have to go to court to annul the old marriage? And what if you live abroad and your wife lives in Ghana? What is the process? Okay, I think the process, lawyer has just explained the process. But the main question is, if your spouse is no more and you would want to remarry, do you go to court to annul the marriage?
No, not at all. Death brings to an end
The marriage.
conjugal relationship. So that's the way it is. You don't need any evidence. It's rather for anybody who wish. Of course, if you've got an existing marriage and you conduct another a process of marriage, that becomes what we call bigamy. That one you can go to prison for it.
Sure.
So if you go through a process of marriage, the presumption is that you are single, you are unmarried, and that, of course, is the evidence that your spouse
It's
is no more, and therefore you just go through it, and that will be it. But marriages depend on what kind of marriage that is talking about. I've mentioned that there are 3 forms of marriage recognized in Ghana. I wouldn't call it first, but maybe put it. We've got customary marriage, we've got Mohammedan marriage,
And the
then we've got the ordinance. That's those 3 forms of marriage. So depending on which one you want to contract, each one has got its own incidents. So for instance, customary marriage is essentially in Ghana what we call a marriage between 2 families. You have to go, and typically in almost all the cases that I know, it's always the man who has to go to the woman's family, and the family have to be satisfied as to what conditions or terms that they require for you to have their daughter as your wife. If it is a Mohammedan marriage, they also have a form that they go through before the marriage becomes valid. Then we've got an ordinance marriage. Obviously, please, let's be careful. The ordinance marriage is not necessarily what you hold in the church. It's not necessary. There are requirements of law that must be met. The publication of banks, registered certificate.
To make the marriage ordinance.
Right. So, because there have been situations where marriages have been nullified on the basis that even though it was done in a church, even the priest who officiates or the marriage officer must be licensed by the Registered General's Department.
Exactly.
So the people must be asking their own churches, asking their own pastors whether they may license. Even the premises system must be licensed, and so forth and so on. So sometimes the people just go through this marriage. There's a very flamboyant church wedding and everybody is happy. Meanwhile,
they may not be licensed.
The requirements of the law had not been met, because maybe the place not even licensed, the officiating minister had not been licensed, and so forth and so on. Even time, there are times within which women can conduct a marriage. You can't conduct a valid marriage after 6 p.m. If you do a marriage, conduct the marriage, the actual ceremony goes beyond 6 p.m. I mean, the law will not recognize it.
Wow.
So these are all things which people ought to know.
And I hear now, especially so the small churches that are coming up, you've attended ceremonies at places and you would hear the priest say that the church has been licensed and he, the officiating minister, is also licensed to do what, just so people's minds are clear. I actually hear them read it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Well, if they do so, they say so, and they have not been licensed.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, they are more than criminals.
So what we are establishing here is that if your spouse is no more, and it's been established that your spouse is no more, you don't need any court processes to be able to remarry.
No.
Okay, so there you go. Question answered. There's this one here that says that, does my company automatically become ours after marriage? So she is running the business on her own, or it could be the man running his business on his own. And then we've gone through the ordinance marriage, for instance, and we are married now. Is it that my possessions automatically become yours and you can lay claim to them anytime?
Good. I was talking to you about what we call ancillary reliefs, which are related to divorces. We talked about custody. The other one is financial provisions and settlement of properties. The current position of the law in Ghana is that properties that are acquired in the course of the marriage are intended to be held jointly by the parties, unless there is evidence to show that either party intended to hold any particular property for himself or for herself. So that's the general classification. And what then happens is that every time that a marriage comes to an end, I mean, all these things, they come into controversy. All of them. But the court don't have any difficulty at all in making this determination. So I'll put it very bluntly. When you have a company, you relate to the company by way of your shares. So the shares that you have in the company, it comes into the divorce bowl. Because at the end of it, the court's duty is to settle both parties. There's some principle of equality and equity that the court uses to determine what each party must have. Almost always is the men who are the most well-to-do in these matters, but there have been also instances where the women are the
I have some questions like that as well.
We'll come to that. So therefore, upon divorce, your shares in the company are not your shares in the sense of you being the sole owner. It comes into the bowl for the court to do the distribution. And what it means...
No, the question the person is asking is that they have their own company they're managing and
the
everything.
Two of them.
No, one person.
Sure.
So it could be either the man or the woman.
You're right.
They're asking, does this company become ours the moment we are married?
No, there's nothing like that. And that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay.
You see, call it JZY company. And you have shares, because it may not be the case that you are 100% owner.
No, in this
but
case,
if
the
there's
person says
if the sole owner,
it's
it's the same thing. It's the shares that are in which are yours, it will come into the board. It will come into the board. Indeed, in other jurisdictions, I mean, it did not even matter whether you set out the company during the course of the marriage. In other jurisdictions, whether before, after, during, all of that can come into the bowl. And the court, in making distribution, financial provisions, and so forth and so on, can go into it, relate to your shares, the value of it, and take into consideration in determining who must have what.
I see.
It's as simple as that.
I see.
So that's the way it goes.
So does it become yours together the moment you're married? I want us to establish that.
Yeah, what happens is that until the divorce, it was yours.
It was the individuals.
That is so. But upon divorce, you're asking the court to divide the property. You are asking the court to do this. So everybody has to bring what he has come into the bowl. Unless, like I said, there's clear evidence to show, and I'm talking about evidence, there might be an indication. Other places, how they solve this problem is through what they call prenuptial agreements, in which people clearly set down what each party must have. If it got a company, like in this case, what must happen to the company upon divorce. But if in Ghana here, I tell my practice, I've done about only two of these agreements, in which people decide ahead of time what each party is going to get after the marriage upon divorce. But other than that, if there's nothing like that, there's absolutely no way that if you're asking the court to make a distribution of spousal properties and wherever, you think you can put that company aside and then come in and ask the court to give this to you and give that to you. No, it also come into the board.
I see.
That's as simple as that.
Then that answers the question,
Sure.
because this is from a gentleman who says that my wife owns huge businesses registered in her name. She has refused to change them to our names. What chances do I have at benefiting in case we go our separate ways? Note, she was running these businesses long before we got married.
Well, that answers the point, because she was running along before they started a marriage. For all you care, the man has also got his, maybe small businesses, but they are his. And it's all about how they related to these businesses even during the course of the marriage. And if the intention is quite clear that by the way they conducted themselves during the course of the marriage, there was every intention on the part of each one of them to mind his or her own business, if I may put it that way, then the court will hold that it was clear from your attitude, it was clear from your conduct, it was clear from everything that you people did during the course of the marriage, that each party intended to mind his or her own business and own it as such. So therefore, it's not just going to come into the bowl, because that is the position of the Ghana law, as I understand it, that things that have been acquired during the course of the marriage, your business is part of the things. But like I said, the court will always look for the evidence to see how the parties themselves related. Because let's put it this way, I mean, now women own properties, men own properties. So in the course of the marriage, there's evidence that I got this property, Isla, you also got this property, Medina. It's your name. The other one is also in my name. There's a presumption that we intended to hold, each party wanted to hold his property for himself or for herself. That's the clear evidence based.
So before, are we saying that before it comes into the bowl,
Yes.
those necessary changes should have been done after marriage?
Well, you see that issue always arises specifically with properties in the sense of real property burdens. Okay, that's where people say that you acquire the land in your own name, you should acquire it in our joint
In our
names and so forth and so. So I believe it's a similar thing that is happening here.
Yes.
If the evidence is quite clear, but you have said that there's something that you've said that makes me believe that it may not come into the bowl, because if you say that the woman was running that business even before,
Long before,
then it will be hard to demonstrate to a court of law that the business that she was running long before you were married suddenly became marital property.
Great.
The court will not hold that position.
Okay, I have very interesting questions.
Let them flow.
My wife is rich and influential. I chanced on her will, and she had willed everything to her children except for the car I drive, which she bought for me. In case it remains the same and the inevitable happens, can I contest the will? I have been married to her for 5 years. We do not have any kids together. I have been loving and loyal to her. I feel used. She is older than me. What do I do?
You know, the logic in his analysis does not flow. That he feels you. But let me go straight to the question. In the first place, there is something that let me put the first principles first. First and foremost, you will properties that you own yourself.
Exactly.
So that I've got every right in law to determine everything that I have, who it must go to. Elsewhere, they give it to the cats, the dogs, and wherever. It's the person's own right. That's the way it goes. So therefore, the sole issue that arises is whether the properties that have been willed, particularly if they've been married for 5 years, were acquired by her at all material time before possibly they contracted the marriage. And if it is so, she's got a right to will it the way that she has done. That's the first point. The other point that the law recognizes, there's something we call, every time that someone has made a will, the law requires that there are some people, for good reason, that you cannot live out of your will without making a provision for them. First and foremost are infants, people who obviously, below the age, or they are not adults. That's your children.
Exactly.
The other one, of course, is your spouse.
But in this case, she has given
You,
him a
you
car.
hold it. You hold it. And what the law says is what we call reasonable provision.
Okay.
Reasonable provision is so relative and so subjective.
I can imagine.
That it has to do with your condition in life. And therefore, if you go to court and your case, because don't forget that we call a will a testament, it's sacred.
Yeah.
As a rule, the courts are not required to tamper with anybody's will or the provisions that a person has made. It's not the business and the duty of the court to determine reasonableness with regard to how somebody distributes
their property.
But the court can only intervene in those situations where reasonable provision has not been made by a spouse. So when you go to court and your case is that your spouse has failed to make reasonable, you must demonstrate the state of life in which you live, for which you have been left a pauper. That's the way you must demonstrate. You must demonstrate that without a provision being made for you, you may possibly die of hunger. You must demonstrate that without a provision being made for you, you may possibly not be able to live from day to day. So it's not a question of a portion of the property being yours. If you want to contest any part of the property as being yours, that's a different matter. But if you admit that the properties belong to your wife and she has failed to make provision for you, you've got a big header that you have to clear. And that header, how you clear it, will be your own business. Like I've said, you have to demonstrate. It's very easy, for instance, for infants, especially if they're in school and so forth and so. But listen quite carefully. There are times that people state this reason why they do what they did in their will. I have read wills, I have made wills in which people have devised the King James Version of the Bible, or the New International Version of the Bible, or the Revised Standard Version of the Bible. Some of them were particular quotes in the Bible that the person to whom they devised that must go and read. Some also have made peppercorn. I mean, they've made provisions which are like, give this my son 10 cedis, and they explain why you must get 10 cedis. And so forth. So the person want to make it in such a way as to show that it's not like he forgot. It's not like he didn't know.
They knew what they were doing.
You know what I'm saying? So in this particular case, that the man has been given a car, whether it's a Pontiac or Toyota or whatever, possibly if you go to court, the court may ask you, why don't you go and sell the car if you think that your situation is so desperate and so forth and so. Please, there are an exception to the law or the rule, and therefore when you come under the exception, you've got a big header to clear. And I've been involved in cases where people have sought reasonable provision, and the evidence was that themselves were well to do, or they themselves were people within their own means. And the whole idea that in addition to what they themselves have, the other parties should also have added more, it's a fiction that no court would entertain.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we will take a commercial break now, but before I go, let me just put this one out there, and then when we come back, we'll answer it. He says, before we got married, my wife bought a car and a house for me. They are all in her name though. She assured me that they will all be transferred to my name when we get married. We have been married for 6 months and she has still not done it. She says it does not matter for as long as we remain married. It does not matter for as long as we remain married. She says, I am also now automatically the owner of everything she owns by virtue of marriage. So all that does not matter anymore. Is this really true? What if she ends, she writes a will that totally excludes me? Does my being husband to her make me a legal beneficiary, even though she might have excluded me totally in her will? We will come back shortly to answer that.
Ophebia, did you brush your teeth before eating?
No, mommy. Anytime I use daddy's toothpaste, I get bruises in my mouth, and sometimes I feel like vomiting.
That's not an excuse. As a child, you need to brush your teeth before you take your breakfast to avoid tartar and cavity, okay? And you, why are you laughing at your sister? Have you brushed your teeth?
Yes, Mom. I used the Kel Kids toothpaste you brought yesterday to brush my teeth.
Well done, darling. Kel Kids toothpaste is made for kids like you from 2 years to 6 years.
It was so sweet like strawberry. I even wanted to eat it, Mom.
No, you can't eat it. It's toothpaste, not toffee, okay? It's always advisable to give your kids Kel Kids toothpaste to brush their teeth. Kel Kids toothpaste strengthens teeth and prevents decay and cavities. As a mother, I always make sure my kids use Kel Kids toothpaste. Kel Kids toothpaste with strawberry flavor makes brushing exciting for our kids.
Kel, happy smile.
This advert is FDA approved.
Do not improvise an auto gas cylinder. Make sure the auto gas cylinder is properly installed by a qualified technician. Always keep a fire extinguisher handy in case of a fire. Stand at a safe distance and attack the base of the flames. Avoid decanting LPG from one cylinder to the other. Domestic transfer of LPG should be avoided. Cars fitted with auto gas cylinders should be filled at the appropriate filling stations. A message from the National Petroleum Authority.
The party is back. Yes, the fun is back. GH Music's biggest weekend is back in full color. Brace yourself for 2 days of fireworks on the 6th and 7th of May at the Grand Arena. On the bill, Kitty, Black Sharif, Mr. Drew, Sinner Soul, Ohima Messi, Joe Metal, Aquaba, Kelvin Boy, Sefa, Jackie, Kamido, Samini, Kofi Kinata, Celestine Donko, and many more. Get your tickets for 200 Ghana cedis flat for day 1 and 500 Ghana cedis premium and 300 Ghana cedis standard for day 2. Available at Nalem stores, Accra Mall, X-Men, Charterhouse, and online at GhanaMusicAwards.com. The 23rd Vodafone Ghana Music Awards. For the people, the culture, the music. Produced by Charterhouse with support from TV3, DSTV, Twitter, MTV Base, Joy FM. Sponsored by Vodafone. Further together.
Celebration. Our music is.
Guess what happens to the brain when you play an instrument or sing? Musically, you are measuring pulse and rhythm, reading and recognizing pitch and controlling physical coordination and fine motor skills while you draw on a group of cognitive skills like thinking, controlling, analyzing, and reading. Rarely is such a wide range of skills present in one activity, but music brings them all together. And science doesn't lie. Research has shown that children who learn music at an early age do well in other subjects in school and have a higher IQ. So, why haven't you enrolled your child at Music Haven? At Music Haven, we will teach them the piano, organ, violin, trumpet, saxophone, and so much more, allowing them to combine many different mental and physical activities. Music making tasks all regions of the human brain and helps you think better. So give your child a gift of a lifetime. Music Haven is on Mensa Saba Road near the Malamata Market and next door to Tele Data. We're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Oh, and we also give online lessons. Call Music Haven on 0244 356 173 or 055 255 8398. Bring your children to Music Haven and make them heroes among their peers.
Great. Thank you for staying tuned in. This is Home Affairs. We're live on Joy Prime Television and also on Joy FM. We have been talking about the law and your marriage, and we have been asking questions that people have sent to us. I read a question to Lawyer Pencil. Lawyer, can we go on to answer that question?
Yeah, you're talking about a wife who's bought a property in the name.
Yes, before we got married,
husband.
my wife bought a car and a house for me. They are all in her name though. She assured me that they will all be transferred to my name when we get married. Was it a bribe? I don't know. Now we have been married for 6 months and she still has not done it. She says it does not matter anymore for as long as we remain married. She says that I am also now automatically the owner of everything she owns by virtue of marriage. So all that does not matter. His question is this really true? What if she ends up willing all that to other people and excludes me? Does my being her husband make me a legal beneficiary, even though she might have excluded me totally from her will?
Good. I'll make this general remark. The first point that I'd like to clarify is the fact that first, under a will, there's a presumption of law that you can only will, or rather make a provision or convey a property by your will to anybody as long as the property is yours and yours alone. Of course, if you've got a part interest in a property, you can will that portion of it. But then I will add to that and say that the current position of Ghanaian law is that all properties that were acquired in the course of the marriage, in the absence of contrary evidence, is intended to be owned equally by both parties. Unless, like I said, there's contrary evidence to be gathered from the facts and other evidence and stuff like that. So therefore, if at the commencement of their marriage, they are now acquiring properties, the woman's acquiring properties, I mean, in the typical situation is the man who goes around doing all of these things and the woman who keeps her home and so forth and so on. So the courts have not found any difficulty these days in concluding that a woman's non-economic contribution to the home, it must be considered as all her contribution towards the acquisition of properties. The situation always becomes a little dicey when it's the man who's on the other end, as in this case. So therefore, first and foremost, I'm willing to consider the fact that if properties are being acquired in the course of the marriage, then irrespective of what the man does, and unless there's evidence that as between the two of them, the man is also acquiring his own properties elsewhere.
I'm not getting like this. I don't see the relation.
I'll answer your question.
Yes.
You see, I needed to lay a certain foundation, but I would then come back and make this general point that we have some principles in law. Listen quite carefully. We call it the presumption of advancement. Advancement is a presumption in law that simply states that if a man buys a property in the name of his wife, then he intended it, in the absence of any contrary evidence, then he intended it as a gift
To
for
his
her.
wife.
In other words, he intended for the wife to have the benefit, to convey the interest to her. That's it. But when a woman buys a property in the name of a husband, the presumption is that he intended the husband to hold it as a trustee for her.
So it is still for the woman.
So it's still for the woman. It's a very funny
But that's so not fair.
state of the law. But I believe that one of these days we're going to get our Supreme Court to be able to juxtapose this presumption
We're
of
fighting
law.
for equality.
That is so. That is what the commentators are making a lot of noise about. This part of what I've told you being part of our law, balanced against the current position that things that are acquired in the course of marriage belongs to both parties. until our Supreme Court has possibly ruled on this matter, I want people to be advised very clearly that if your wife buys a property in your name, that alone does not suffice to show that the property is yours. The law is that you are holding it in trust for her. So maybe this man ought to be advised that the property that the wife has bought in his name is, in the eyes of the law, makes him a caretaker, makes him a trustee.
No, in this case, the properties are even in the name of the woman.
Then no issue arises.
And then she says that I will do the change of ownership when we are married. They have been married for 6 months. Change of ownership has not been done. So she breached the contract, first of all. Now her explanation is that, don't worry about it anymore. You're my husband. And beyond the car and the house, every other thing I own is also for you. So forget it. Now the guy is beginning to think that, no, this woman wants to swindle me. You said you were going to change this thing. You haven't changed it. What if you end up, and he knows, I think he is afraid because he knows that everything the woman owns is hers and hers alone. He doesn't have anything. So what if she ends up willing everything to her children and all and excludes him? Can he contest anything just by virtue of the fact that he is the woman's wife?
Let me express, and please, I'll put it this way. This is quite clearly my own view of the matter. In other words, if I were a judge, this is how I'm going to rule on this matter. First and foremost, based on the facts that have been given to us, if these are all the facts that we have, that they are married, the woman appears to be well-to-do, she's acquiring properties, I will hold in the first place that insofar as there's clear evidence that there is marriage and all that the man is doing all he can to make it possible for her to acquire the properties, the situation that always existed for women, what they call non-economic contribution,
should exist for the man.
Should exist for the man.
That's all.
What is good for the goose is equally good for the gander. That's the way I will hold. And therefore, the woman must be telling the truth, even if she thinks she's, she's being smart. And therefore, if for some time, let's say, the woman were to will all these properties to whoever that she wants to, the man can go to court and hold that, or seek a declaration to the effect that all those properties were acquired during the course of marriage, and by reason of the current position of the law, he is equally entitled to a half share. Equality is equity. So I believe that he can get a court to hold that position. So that's my view of the matter. So if whatever the woman tells him, he must believe it as gospel. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's my view. That's my clear view.
Now, there's a question here that we have been divorced for 6 years now with 3 children. I have custody of the children, and my ex was asked to get accommodation for us. As I'm talking now, where we live is where to live is a problem to me and the children, because my ex is saying he is not in a position to pay rent now. Please ask lawyer what I can do.
You can go to the court to have the order enforced. You do it by citing the man for contempt of court. When a court makes an order, the order is intended for compliance. And the person against whom the order is made, if you've got any reason for not being able to do it, you go back to the court and you seek for some remedial relief, so whatever it is, from concession. But if you just keep it yourself and keep telling this, all that the person in whose favor the order was made ought to do to enforce compliance is to cite the person for contempt of court. Contempt of court in the instant case consists of the person knowing of an order that the court has made directly against him and refusing, failing, or neglecting to comply with the order. And if he goes to the court, and possibly if he hasn't got a good reason to give to the court, even if it's got a good reason, he's still in breach, and that is it. Disobedience to a lawful order of court. Even if you've got a problem with the order, for instance, you have appealed. That's what some of them do. Maybe there's appealed, and maybe he's taking steps, whatever. The law is that an appeal itself cannot be a sufficient basis for not complying with the order, unless, of course, you've secured what we call a stay of execution. If not, this is an order that speaks for itself. So that's what she can do. Go back to the court, cite the man for contempt of court. And I'll be very funny. Let me tell you something. There's an observation that I personally have made. A lot of these, our courts, especially the district courts, most of them, the judges are women. And when the men go and tell their stories, all these stories about why they cannot look after their children, whatever, they will remand you into custody, okay? You go for 2 weeks, and when you are in there 2 weeks, you begin to think and begin to wonder whether you can go back to the court on the next agenda to go and repeat that excuse to the court. And that's about how our courts have been able to hold a lot of these, if I may put it, irresponsible men, in check. Because that's almost always the case. I would advise that that's what she needs to do.
Great.
Yes.
So this message is from Uncle Paul Bile, Polankra. He says that Hey Kweku is on legal fire this morning.
Oh, Lord.
Superbly explicit on marital law. Wow. So that's for you. Now, for your eye care challenges, look no further. Amasha Partners Limited and Eye Care has it all. Your eyes deserve the best care and quality designer eyeglasses. Amasha Partners and Eye Care undertake the following services: supply of designer frames, sight testing, supply of lenses, sunglasses, contact lenses, ophthalmologist in attendance, and general treatment. Locate Amasha Partners at La Opposite Trade Fair, Spencer's adjacent ICGC before the Community 18 Junction, McCarthy Hill. They are opposite Benjay Lodge. When you go to North Kaneshi, Swan Lake, they're opposite the Greenhand Junction. Achimota, you can find them on the second floor in the Dainsua Plaza. Takrady on the Axim Road opposite CBJ Bank. Ho, they are opposite the Housing Junction. Kumasi, you can find them around the airport roundabout. And Kolibu, they are opposite the ECG and Kufuridua Central Hospital Road. And in Tema, they are in the community. They are in Community 1, that's the Meridian Plaza. Numbers to call 0302-939-850 and 0302-778227. You can follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the ARC Foundation presents a Mother's Day Shelter fundraiser on Saturday, the 7th May 2022. Time is 9 a.m. through to 3 p.m. and the venue is the ARC Foundation Crisis Response Center located at Hacho. As part of this year's Mother's Day commemoration, the ARC is raising funds and resources for its crisis center and shelter for abused women and children. The ARC is therefore calling on individuals, philanthropists, and corporate bodies and other organizations who would like to support our shelter for abused women and sexually assaulted young women and girls at our Mother's Day event to reach out on telephone number 0243777773 and 0243061472. All friends and families, network partners, and the general public are invited to come and support us and mobilize resources for this noble cause. We are ever grateful for your support. This announcement is sponsored by the Multimedia Group. Once again, I want to say a very big thank you to Amasha Partners Limited and Eye Care, Kel Charcoal Toothpaste, and Music Haven for sponsoring Home Affairs. Still have a number of questions. Our marriage is 3 months. Can I please ask for divorce when I notice she's a promiscuous wife? Please answer me. It says, please answer me, please.
In the first place, there can be no grant of a divorce in an ordinance marriage, which is less than 2 years at all. That's if I may use a layman's language, there's a legal ban. And if indeed you need to seek a divorce for a marriage which is less than 2 years, you need to go to the court and seek leave. You know, I think one of the first things that I like people to understand is that under our laws in Ghana, Marriage is not yours for the asking. I keep making this point, and it's
Is
about
it marriage
time.
or divorce, you mean?
I'm sorry, divorce is not yours for the asking, because a judge, and there are reported cases, a judge has the power to refuse a divorce even when both parties have agreed that they want a divorce. And that's what people need to understand. Our marriage has been hedged in by, in fact, marriage is actually an institution that is from the Bible. And having regard to the fact that our Matrimonial Causes Act and the one that preceded it, which is based on English law, was part of ecclesiastical law. People must appreciate some of these things, and even though in the jurisdictions from which we took our best practices from, they may have departed from some of the things that I'm talking about. First and foremost, like I said, if both parties are asking for divorce, because that's what happened, we've got a petition, a counter petition. The man says, I want a divorce. The woman says, I also want a divorce. The man says, I want a divorce for unreasonable behavior. The woman says, I want a divorce for adultery, and so forth and so on. In fact, if you look at the Matrimonial Causes Act, it's been hemmed in by so many bats. I mean, for instance, even if you want a divorce for adultery, let's think quite carefully. The rule or the law is that, you see, that you want an adultery by reason of how intolerable the person's system is with. I mean, the whole adultery. But the law is that if upon knowledge of that adultery, you continue to live for the man, with a man, and everything as husband, and forget it, the court will not grant you divorce.
Right.
You must demonstrate that after the adultery, at least 6 months after adultery, you have not lived with him as husband and wife. So, for instance, even though people think, I mean, adultery, and two, I mean, I cannot, for instance, rely on my own adultery as a basis for seeking a divorce. You can't go to court and say, listen, this is my wife, and I've been sleeping around, and therefore the court must look at my own immoral or amoral or whatever conduct as a reason. And so each of those even grounds of divorce have been hemmed in by something else. But on the whole, the judge can take the evidence, because see, these days people marry and they say that, I thought I would love her.
But I don't.
The court are not there to listen to that kind of language. The court will take evidence. If the court is unable, for instance, for the man who wants a divorce on the basis of adultery, if the court finds, for instance, that in spite of the knowledge of adultery, continue to live the man, continue to enjoy consortium and all of that, forget it. They will throw you out of the court.
All right.
That's what the judge is supposed to do. And that's one of the things that I've said, that within 3 months, if you think your wife is promiscuous, come on, you are not God. But first and foremost, you don't even qualify to bring a petition. And secondly, even if you bring a petition, and all that you tell the judge is that you think you suspect that your wife is promiscuous, the judge will ask you whether you think with your left brain or you think with your right brain.
Oh my God.
He will throw you out.
Too bad our time is up, but then I will put in this last one. Next week is Mother's Day, but for that I would have begged Lawyer Pencil to come again for us to finish the questions, because I have loads of them.
Of marriage, you didn't talk about.
Which one is that?
Keeping a man's name after divorce.
Yes. Okay. So we'll do. Maybe you lump that one and this one up. This one says that I have simply been the other woman for 7 years with 2 children. Does the law recognize my children and I somehow?
A relationship, that's side chick.
Yes. And then the issue about, is it legal or illegal to continue to keep your husband's name after marriage? Maybe in about 2 minutes he can.
Yeah, first and foremost, there is no bastardy in Ghana. In other words, there are no illegitimate children in Ghana. However they are born. Once a man recognizes that these are his children, they are legitimate. It doesn't matter that they don't belong to the matrimonial home. Funeral children, as long as they are proven that they've got the man's DNA or the man owns them, that's it. That settles the question. But it's not the same for women. If a man who is in an ordinance marriage, whatever he does for you, pray that he does it during his lifetime. If he dies, under the law, you are not required as a wife. You cannot seek any relief as a wife. That's how it comes to.
But the children, yes.
Yeah, the children, the law recognizes them.
Beautiful.
The law recognizes them. That's the first point. The other thing about a woman keeping a man's name,
yes,
after divorce, there is a cause of action called jactitation of marriage. Jactitation of marriage is a situation where people claim, it doesn't only men and it's not only about women. people falsely claim that somebody is my husband or somebody is my wife. In fact, it existed on the English law until I think 1962, thereabout, when it was abolished by a particular act. But nonetheless, even yesterday, when I was reading, researching to come to this program, in India, as very recently, their Supreme Court has affirmed a man's right to bar his ex-wife from keeping his name. So it's a very simple thing. And I've always said that if my wife were to divorce me, I will ensure that she doesn't keep the name Pencil. It's as simple as that. It's a trademark. It's an institution.
And that is backed by law.
That is so. At least this common law. So what happens is that, you see, the basis of the claim is that the person is misrepresenting himself or creating a false impression that she's my wife when indeed and fact. Maybe you are also searching, okay? And then this is other woman also keeping that name. And the reason why the women also do that, I don't know. And I do not want to know. That love my dog. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Then you say you don't love me, but still keep my name. Why would you keep my name? When you don't love me, you don't want me. I mean, so I don't understand. Maybe I may want to find out from those women who divorced their husband and still decided there was something good after all about the man, which consisted of the man's name. So I was very happy when I saw that decision of the Supreme Court of India. And it hasn't arisen in Ghana, but I have no doubt that if I
come
go
up
to
sometime.
court, you're very right. If I go to court and tell the court that this woman has left me, she's still keeping my name and giving the people impression that she's still married to me. So please take the name off her. It's the remarkable case of Tina Turner. A similar case arose in the U.S., but that matter I think was eventually settled. By some agreement, where she decided to keep the name Turner. That's the husband's name because she had risen to fame on the back of that name, and somehow she said she didn't want anything in the marriage. You know what I'm saying? So that's the court allowed her to keep that name. But I have no doubt that Mr. Turner didn't want her to keep the name.
That's right.
So that's the way it goes. So women must be very careful when they want to leave a man.
So we have to run away now. Lawyer Petel, thank you very much. After Mother's Day, we will come back to continue. But to Mr. Gordon Odo, Head of Trade Services, Zenith Bank Ghana Limited, today being your birthday, we the children want to say we love you very much. You are a great father. Live long, Papa. From Latte, Mimi, Dromi, is it Kane, and our mother. That's from your children to you, Mr. Gordon Latte. But this is how we end Home Affairs. Thank you very much for doing the listening. Enjoy your weekend and stay with us on Joy 99.7 FM on Enjoy Prime for the rest.